Hello, and hope you all had a good half term. Um, Lots of you who joined me before half term for a Teams lesson started to look at this lesson in a bit of detail. Um, it looks more and more likely. Well, it is going to happen, isn't it? Some of you are going to be, well, hopefully, most of you will be in school before the summer, and you'll be in the core subjects, so English, Maths, Science, and PSHE. But we're hoping potentially during the last week to have a socially distanced lesson with your option subjects too. But obviously, the thing that still takes priority is remote learning because it's still going to happen, and most of your learning is still going to be remote. So you'll find more teachers using YouTube and more teachers using Teams to try and make sure that you keep up to speed and keep learning. So a bit of today's lesson will be quite similar to what some people have already done, but I am going to give you an opportunity for those of you that want to go into a lot of detail about magic bullets. So there are some people who joined me on that Teams lesson, about 12 people in the class that have already done the first part of this. So feel free to skip this if you've already done it. If you haven't, it's really good revision to do because I know you've been working on your cue cards. The key learning question is just on there if you want to write it down, and the dates there. And you can see I'm going to flash up individuals on the screen. So what I will do is allow you, when I flash it up, to pause it and just give yourself 30 seconds to go through each individual and try and just jot down what you can remember. It's always really good. I know you've got your cue cards, I know you've got your mind maps. I know you've been revising this and gone through this, but it's so important to go back and try and make sure that you don't get them confused and you try and build in some specific facts. So if you do want to, more than welcome to have things open in front of you, like your white books or your exercise books or your cue cards, or even your the internet. Okay, right. So we're going to go through each individual. You've got the key learning question down in your books and the date in your books. You're going to have kind of 30 seconds on each individual. I'm not going to wait for 30 seconds because I'm going to allow you to press pause, and if you want to spend a minute on each one, then that's fine. Or even if you want to spend 2 minutes on each one, you can do. I'm just going to flash up the names and get cracking with the lesson. Okay, so the first one to pause on is Edward Jenner, and to go through everything you can remember about Edward Jenner. Remembering, obviously, the key thing, he developed the first ever vaccination and the links between smallpox and cowpox. That should give you a good start for 10, and then you can go off and get more specific facts about him. Okay, off you go. Press pause. Okay, second one is Louis Pasteur. Obviously, the creator and inventor of the germ theory that disproves spontaneous generation. That actually, he says germs cause disease rather than germs are caused by disease. A French scientist working in around the 1850s, 1860s, and 70s. And obviously working in a laboratory with a really good microscope. So that's a bit of a starter for 10 again with Louis Pasteur, a really famous scientist who developed the links between germs and disease. Okay, press pause, off you go. Detail, specific facts, guys. Bang, 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 go. Okay, you probably unpause that and moving on to the next important individual, who obviously is a German scientist. Germany and France were in competition because there was a war going on between them at the same time, which sped up this competition and work with teams in laboratories. Key thing about Koch is Robert Koch takes it a step further. He uses staining to identify specific microbes that cause specific diseases, and he uses petri dishes, staining, dyes, a new technology to do that. And he then goes on to develop some vaccinations against some killer diseases like diphtheria and typhoid. So he links Jenner's work and Pasteur's work. That's a starter for 10. You need more detail than I've just said. Okay, so get your cue cards, have a look at your yellow book, even press pause and get on the internet. Bullet point, what can you remember about Koch? Go. Okay, the fourth out of 5, James Simpson. So with James Simpson, obviously you have got anaesthetics and his link to pain relief. And obviously when he develops the anaesthetics, different types of surgery can actually happen. And people can actually be relieved of all the pain they're in when amputations, etc., are going on. The link to chloroform and ether, etc., and he's linked to Edinburgh, where he was at university and a professor of midwifery. That's a start. You need more about him. Okay, I'm giving you a brief start. You need more. All right, press pause, off you go. And finally, number 5 is Joseph Lister. Okay, Joseph Lister, obviously in his links to antiseptics and carbolic acid, which meant that less people were dying of infection, and also implements were sterilised. You probably can remember the video that we used during that lesson about him realising that infections are created by uncleanliness and unhygienic situations. So as a doctor, he was making sure everything was wiped down and sprayed with carbolic acid. That's a starter again for 10. You need more detail on Lister, so pause it, give yourself a little bit of time and bullet point what else you can remember, or use something to add more detail. Off you go. Okay, so you will have gone through the 5 key individuals in your own time. That's the beauty of doing it on YouTube, isn't it? Rather than you in a live Teams lesson. I think for history, you might sometimes need to press pause and come back to stuff and do a bit of work yourself. So it might take longer, the actual lesson and the work you're doing, and it's important that you get the opportunity to do that. So today's lesson is more about magic bullets, the next step, and what a magic bullet is. So as I said to the people that were on the lesson last time, a magic bullet is what it says. It is something that will cure someone of infection, of a certain infection or a certain disease, and it will target a specific microbe that is causing that disease and kill it. Okay, so magic bullet is very, very similar to a vaccination, but it's against a specific disease. Like we have antibiotics and penicillin to get rid of bacteria as an antibacteria. The first magic bullet we're going to look at that's created was one called Salvarson 606. And it's called 606 because it was the 606th time that this group of scientists had attempted to try and cure syphilis, which is a sexually transmitted disease. And it took them 606 times to do that. So hence the name. But you can tell they're trying to practice and create these things called magic bullets, which are magic cures for a specific disease. And here we are, there's the definition that I've plucked out. A chemical drug that kills the germs causing a specific disease without harming the rest of the body. Feel free to press pause and note that down neatly in your books. Remember, because it's on YouTube, there's no rush. You need to take your time, press pause, make sure you understand it. And you know what, if you come back to this later on in the day, fine. But I'd much rather you to go at your own speed through this lesson, and rather than like we have done on Teams where we're all working at the same pace. You'll see later on it's differentiated because there's some real detail that some of you will think is too much and others will want to have a go at. Okay. Right, there are 3 different videos that I wanted to show around magic bullets. There's one called Salvarson 606, as you can see up here. There's a second magic bullet, Gerhard Domack and Prontosil, and then there's penicillin, which we all know. Alexander Fleming in 1929, by accident, as we'll investigate in a second, creates penicillin, and then 2 individuals, Florian Chain, develop that. In actual fact, we're going to come back to the video. I've got a video link there, but I think we might finish with a video. So we've got an idea of magic bullets are simply chemical drugs that are curing specific diseases. This one is coded Salvarson 606, cures syphilis. Prontosil here, worked on by Gerhard Domack, cures another specific disease, which you're going to have a look at in a second. And then penicillin, which is the antibiotic. Okay, so you don't need to make any of these notes at all. Okay, but you can see that they're experimenting on mice. This one here is the 606th time. They have Japanese scientists in as well as European scientists working on it. And then finally we have penicillin and Fleming, who works on penicillin with the 2 people, Florian Chain. So you don't need to press pause here at all and make any notes on those at all. I know there's a lot of information there. I'm just giving you the background. Now, the inquiry question that I would have wanted to go with today, and I would have asked you to investigate if we were doing a normal lesson and got you to work in groups or in pairs, is how did magic bullets help fight disease? Now, there's actually, I would say, 7, 8, 9 steps in this process. And it all happens from about 1900 onwards. So if you think about your timeline, we've looked at the germ theory, which is kind of 1860s, 1870s with Koch, and the same with Lister and Simpson. They were around about the same time, a little bit earlier actually. And we're moving on just into before World War One, which was 1914 to 18. And we have a real development, and science is really booming with the introduction of new technologies. And as you can see, this is taken from a task I'd done with Year 11 earlier this year as a revision task, that they were visiting different steps around the room and actually asking questions of each one. But what I'm going to do for this is allow you to choose. Some of you who want the detail and want to go for the grade 7s and above, we'll take time on this and we'll actually look at each of these stages, but it's a lot of work, okay? This is taken from a school that I used to work at, and I would use some of this with A-level kids, so please don't think that you have to do this next task. There'll also be a video at the end which you could watch as well, which will actually help you understand a bit more about penicillin. But I'm going to give you the opportunity to pause on each slide, and there are 2 questions to answer based on the information on the slide. So there is a lot of reading there, which, like I said, you don't necessarily have to do, but some of you going for the higher grades will want to do. Okay, so this is just a bit of an overview around magic bullets. You can see here we had a German scientist called von Behring, and something around antitoxins. Okay, so there's a question there about what is an antitoxin, just there. And in there we will see that antitoxins is directed against poison produced by bacteria, not against the bacteria themselves. So I can let you have a read of that and find out the answer for what is an antitoxin, but essentially that's what it is. And then you've also got who was he? Describe what he discovered and how it helped cure a deadly disease, diphtheria. Okay, and his work on guinea pigs of rats and so on. That in itself is a lot of reading. Okay, and I know there's a lot of steps, but if you wanted to press pause and have a go at that, then you can do. Okay, then we move on to another scientist. Again, don't worry about trying to remember these names. You won't necessarily need to. Certainly for grades 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you definitely won't need to. But Ehrlich here was born in Poland, which was formerly Germany, and he worked with Robert Koch, who we know a bit about. He was in his team, okay? And he was basically looking for a treatment for sleep sickness. And he found that a chemical worked well, which was a kind of strong arsenic compound, and it was poisonous. That was the problem. So he began a long search for this compound that would be a magic bullet in the end. And here we can see the link to the work of Salveson 606 and what work they did there. And the questions at the bottom around how Koch helped him. What he actually discovered for a cure for syphilis, which we've kind of touched on just then, the chemical compound of what we spoke about earlier, and then why Ehrlich named his new cure a magic bullet. And that should be pretty self-explanatory when you understand that it went straight to the disease and harmed nothing else in the body at all. It just killed that specific disease. So again, please press pause, have a go. But there's a lot there, so you don't necessarily need to. I'm just really trying to stretch people and give them the option to work in a bit more depth and detail for the grade 7s and above. We've got another guy here who works on a dye, Prontosil Red, which is tried clinically actually against a difficult infection called streptococcal. And it was a real success, this magic bullet. And those of you that know your science, it was a sulfonamide, and it became a really, really, really important drug. But he was actually a Nazi German policy. He was unable to accept, his Nobel Peace Prize. I should have said that first, because he was a Nazi German, because of the Nazi policy. and he received a gold medal and diploma. He's also active in research of TB and cancer. But this individual produced a magic bullet simply by being inspired by previous people, but he just noticed the antibacterial action of one of the dyes, and he again tested stuff on mice. So feel free to press pause and do the same with him. Now moving on to penicillin, which is a bit more interesting because we still use it today, and obviously we know hopefully what an antibiotic is. It's against life is what it stands for, and it basically means it's a bit strange, but it's basically killing bacteria. Okay, that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to kill bacteria as much as possible without harming the rest of the body. So under here, if you just have a look carefully, you can answer question 2. But again, I'll let you press pause and have a go at that yourself. We've then got Fleming himself, who did discover penicillin. You can see the picture of him here, and probably the link over to some of your science lessons. But obviously there's a factor called chance here, which we haven't spoken much about. We spoke about religion earlier on, individuals all the time, science, technology, war, and communication, but chance plays a part here, as you can see. Something to do with here, a mould in a petri dish. The difficult thing with this, I think, is always this phrase here, which is really tough. Staphylococcus bacteria. You're not going to need to remember that necessarily. You'll just need to know that it's a form of bacteria, but that's just the name given to it. If you want the detail and the depth. But again, there's information there you can read through, and a question you can answer underneath about how chance helped. Then obviously his idea, penicillin, and Fleming's idea of penicillin was taken further by these two individuals, Florey and Chain. So Fleming does write a lot of reports around his research and how he finds out what antibiotics are, but he struggles to get funding as well, but he does need different types of people. So Cheney is kind of a more... Cheney did actually, they're both a bit high up. I think Florey was at Oxford, I think Cheney was also at Harvard or Yale. But they needed some more funding, and they needed some more scientists to actually develop it and take it on and test it on more mice, and inject different mold cultures into different mice and different levels of toxicity. And there was factors that were important in the development of drug, which were these two individuals, because they were very clever, very, very clever and very intelligent scientists. And there was also kind of teamwork as a factor, and also technology and how much technology they were using, and constant practice. Another one on Norman Heatley, which you don't really need to know. This is the kind of like 9+ level. So please, again, press pause if you want to read it. It gives you a bit more of an interest, a bit more detail into the story, and have a go at the question if you want to. And then this is really interesting, because the whole point is, it saved so many lives, penicillin, in World War II. You remember World War One in the trenches, and how many died of infection due to trench foot, and so on and so forth during World War One. Well, it didn't happen so much in World War Two, because once America joined the war after Pearl Harbor, they started to mass produce this drug penicillin, which was an antibiotic, so they could give it to people on the battlefield. And the government actually did support eventually by funding the production. And the chemical industry as well in America did support by actually churning out loads and loads and loads of penicillin in tablet form eventually, but also in injection form. But there was so much penicillin grown throughout America and parts of Britain that we were able to get the government to fund this. And unfortunately, the pharmaceutical companies in Britain didn't actually end up making it as much as those that did in America. So that's a really significant point, and so therefore less lives were lost. But the war accelerated the production of penicillin 100%, because in the war it meant that more people wanted antibiotics, so they produced more. A little bit of a source analysis that people saw last lesson that I thought I'd share with you as well. It's quite interesting, because from that picture you can obviously learn, it's a piece of propaganda, but the importance of science and the production, and also the fact that it's accepted first for this time. Thanks to penicillin, he's going to come home. So there's this idea that the public are beginning to accept changes in science and developments in medicine, which they never did before. It's a big turning point, because they can see less lives being lost due to infection. Okay. Right, I'm just going to go back and play you this video now. If you want to, I know you've probably been pressing pause and having a look at quite a lot of the detail in there, but I'm going to play you this video. If you wanted to for the video, just put a kind of mind map in there and put penicillin in the middle, and maybe Fleming, Florey and Cheney, because they're the people that you're going to be focusing on in this little clip. And this clip will take 4 minutes, but I think these are brilliant, really good overviews for anyone working from a grade 9 to a grade 1. They're really good overviews of basic detail, but in some cases they do go into more detail. So I'll just make sure you can see it and hopefully hear it. Okay, let's put the volume right up. Right.
Chain. Throughout the murky meanders of medical history, millions of people died from infection every year. Even minor infections could become fatal. In the 20th century, that started to change, with the groundbreaking work of 3 medical superstars, Fleming, Florey and Cheney, who were responsible for developing the world's first antibiotic, penicillin. The story started in the 1860s with Louis Pasteur, whose germ theory paved the way for a greater understanding of bacteria. By 1914, scientists had discovered several magic bullets, chemicals that specifically targeted and killed disease-causing microorganisms in the body. But magic bullets didn't work against Staphylococcus, a nasty little brute of a bacteria. They could lead to everything from pimples and impetigo to pneumonia and meningitis. Step forward, Alexander Fleming. Our first superstar wasn't having any of this Staphylococcus nonsense. He saw how it had killed soldiers in the First World War and set about finding a solution, which came about by accident when he left a petri dish full of Staphylococcus just sitting in his lab, as you do. When he returned to the dish, a mould had started growing, killing the pesky bacteria. He called this mould penicillin. Aha, Fleming thought, I've got you now, Staffy. But that's where his breakthrough petered out, because he never tested his penicillin on an infected animal, which meant he never fully realised its properties, and he just sort of moved on. But unknowingly, Fleming had set the scene for our next 2 superstars to shine. Howard Florey and Ernst Chain were researchers at Oxford University. When they discovered Fleming's findings in 1937, they decided to put penicillin to the test. They applied for funding from the hard-up wartime government, who gave them a whopping £25. Ooh, don't spend it all at once, guys. But Florey and Chain made do, and quickly set up a mould-growing lab to test infected mice, and eventually humans. The first person they treated with penicillin was policeman Albert Alexander in 1940. He'd been accidentally scratched by a rose thorn in his mouth that had become badly infected with Staphylococcus. The penicillin improved Alexander's condition dramatically, but as soon as his supply ran out, Alexander died, providing a cautionary tale for any would-be rosebush canoodlers out there. So, not exactly a perfect outcome, but the impact of the trial results was ginormous. For the first time, the reliable effectiveness of an antibiotic had been proven, and it couldn't be ignored. At the end of the Second World War, the US and UK governments had invested in tons of the stuff. 15% of people with infected injuries during the war had been saved by penicillin. That's an impressive stat for a humble bit of art. After the war, penicillin was officially classed as an antibiotic and went into mass production, saving millions of lives and marking the beginning of huge government investment in new medicines. And so we come to the end of our mouldy, marvellous tale. The discoveries of Fleming, Florey and Chain had a monumental impact on medicine, preventing millions of unnecessary deaths. Granted, other factors helped them out. These included war, advanced production technology, and a healthy dollop of chance. We're looking at you and your lucky mould, Fleming. Today, penicillin is still commonly used as an effective cure for many infections. You've probably had it yourself. However, like everything amazing in life, it has its limitations. Just as magic bullets were discovered to be ineffective against Staphylococcus, penicillin is ineffective against superbugs like MRSA. So let's hope this latest challenge will inspire innovative medical minds today. That's you.
Okay, so like I said before, I quite like those because they give a really kind of nice overview, don't they? And that one linked a lot of the topics quite nicely as well. So that's it today. A little bit of an introduction into Magic Bullets. I think what we're definitely going to do is we're going to be finishing medicine before the summer, 100%. Because we haven't got much left. We have NHS and the Second World War. The Second World War and then the development of the NHS and kind of 20th century DNA medicine and bits and bobs in kind of modern day stuff, but there's not much left. So what I think is we'll properly revise it, and I'll do some more videos and some more Teams lessons, and we'll actually start looking at some exam questions, I think, so we can hit the ground running in September with Elizabeth, and then have enough time to get Elizabeth done by Christmas, and then have enough time to revise everything and prioritise medicine because you've been off in America, with the hope that your career in Vietnam is pretty strong. Okay. Right, guys. Okay, year 10. Please watch it. Give me a smiley face on Show My Homework if you've watched it. Drop me an email. Let me know if you've got any questions, and keep going. And hopefully I'm going to see a lot of you in a few weeks on the 15th of June. Okay, take care. Bye.